I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board of Leavenworth County Commissioners. I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to begin with a moment of silence, please. Roll call, begin with Commissioner Stiebens. Here. Commissioner Schimke.
Present.
Commissioner Smith is here. Commissioner Culbertson.
Here.
And Commissioner KAAZ.
Here.
All commissioners are present. We don't have any public comment this morning. Do we have any administrative business before we move on to the consent agenda?
Just want to give you a quick update. We did submit the KAAZ Act spending plan last week to the state. Received acknowledgement that they had received it. The last report, they said they would let us know somewhere between now and the 15th of September if it was accepted. If they had any issues with it, we should have the opportunity to adjust it or address those issues.
Okay.
But so far, we're on track with what we felt. We do have numerous requests that have come in from the agencies that we've identified as receiving funds from the county. So we will be processing those here over the next week or so to get those funds reimbursed out to the entities that have requested so far.
Clarification on that: the smaller cities and the townships, they have till what?
So the policy right now says that basically the end of October is the timeline to get their requests in, so that we have a chance to reallocate funds if they're not all used. And then by November 20th, we have to have everything back into the state. So I didn't want to have them wait until the last minute and us miss out.
So the last day of October?
Yeah, last day of October.
Okay.
If we get it by then, that should be fine.
Okay.
Question on this, I visited with you before, but on this KAAZ Act broadband grant possibility, can you kind of update us on that and what the possibility is of us getting some of those funds?
So the state has initiated a second round of funds that they're committing to different expenditures. I think some of them are related to distance learning, some of them are related to higher education. But one of the programs that they've announced on Friday was that they were going to be offering grants for programs that would extend broadband to underserved areas. So there's kind of a couple of steps there. One, you have to be able to identify and justify that it is actually an underserved area. And then two, you have to have a provider that's willing to commit to extending services into that underserved area. And I guess the third step is it all has to be done by the end of the end of the year. The grant applications have to be in by next Thursday. So didn't get a lot of advance time. However, back in June, I had actually reached out to broadband providers asking them if they were interested in working on any projects because I knew we were going to be getting KAAZ Act funds. I didn't realize the state was also going to be doing something. But when I reached out to those providers, only one got back to me and we exchanged some information. They were already in the process of extending their 5G capabilities in Leavenworth County, so they thought there might be an opportunity. But mid-July was our last communication. I think that some of the challenges that they run into is that it has to be done by the end of the year. And, with these larger organizations, sometimes they can't get a decision in 90 days, and then actually getting construction. So I've reached back out to them once the state made their announcement. I reached back out to the group I was working with that had actually responded, and also to a couple of the landline providers just to see if there's any interest. But very short window turnaround. The 27th is the deadline for any applications.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a meeting or a telephone meeting prior to that on that?
They have one this Friday. There's a telephone
Right.
conference call where they'll be going over the program again. Applications open up on the 19th. So I think that's today. So today is the first day that applications can be submitted. They announced it Friday.
Right.
So I don't know if a lot of people are going to be flowing in, but they're not going to review any applications till the 27th. So there's no priority given if you get in on the first day or the last day. But it's a limited amount of money for the whole state. And there's no guarantee that they will fund your program or at what level they'll fund it, but obviously cooperation with the private sector and the public sector helps any application. And so we're ready. Try to put the message out to those that I'm aware of that provide services outside the city limits, because looking at the federal map, there's none of the cities would qualify for this. It would have to be outside the rural area and outside in the rural area.
And there's other areas in the state of Kansas that would probably score better than we would on a need.
Well, from a percentage of population, we will struggle, because the largest percentage of our population has access already to broadband.
Right.
So you have to then look at, I guess, the cost of extending the services. So if if you're a large area-wide county with low population, they'll probably score higher than us.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have a lot of areas that Commissioner Culbertson in my districts that are
Right.
that would
They are.
would definitely like to.
But, and I understand that, but, if you read up on some of these towns in Kansas, don't even have high-speed internet to their banks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just hope we can walk through the door if the door is open for us.
Absolutely.
If we can find a provider that's willing to partner with us, we will definitely be in position to submit an application.
But we won't submit unless we have a provider that will step up.
We would not. There's no chance if we don't have a provider who says yes, we can do this by the end of the year. There's no chance of receiving that grant funding.
Okay. It is a horrible turnaround time. It's just
It makes you wonder.
it's a knee-jerk reaction type turnaround.
I don't wonder. I know exactly what they're doing.
Well, okay, we won't go there. All right, and do you have anything else on that?
Nothing on that.
Okay, and then tomorrow we have Senator Moran, when Director of Federal Prison Bureau will be in Leavenworth. And you going to attend?
Yeah, I plan on going.
And I'll go. Okay. We got 2 commissioners going. And
Hopefully he remembers you, Jen.
Oh, he will.
what am I getting into? Anyways, is there any way we can do a little better on the sound on our for our YouTube and that, picking up the sound of the commissioners?
Well, I know that in the past we've been admonished by IT to make sure and speak into your microphones.
And I try,
that's-
but now
that's-
we've added masks.
Right,
so
that's the biggest step, is to speak into the microphones, but the masks
Okay.
don't help, I'm sure. If they turn the gain up any higher, then we get the feedback. So I think
Okay.
the system is set up right, because we were having really good success. Now it's a little different. I think some is the use of the microphones, speaking into the microphones, and some are the masks.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think we should clarify to people, maybe for the public, is we do have a certain amount of seating here, and we are open. We have 12 seats in here?
Looks like it.
yes.
And,
Well, some of that's got to be for staff, though.
well,
Yeah.
so we are open for the public to the extent that we can be, with considering the whole situation.
Okay. All right. There's no other administrative business. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Anything on the consent agenda that needs to be pulled out and voted on separately? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on any items on the consent agenda? Voting.
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
All right. Thank you. Is there anything else we need before we open up the public hearing on the budget?
This is Commissioner KAAZ.
Okay.
I think if
Go ahead.
my understanding is that we have someone who wants to provide public comment at the end of the meeting on non-agenda items, and we probably should move that up to do that before the executive session.
Okay. That'd be fine.
Sure.
Anything else before we open up the public hearing for the 2021 budget? Then I will open up the public hearing for the 2021 Leavenworth County budget. Is there anyone here to speak on the 2021 budget? Then I will close the public hearing on the 2021 budget.
Commissioners, I'll give you a brief rundown. First of all, as previously discussed and presented, this budget reflects a $0.25 reduction in the mill levy over the previous year. What you're approving today is the general fund, the debt service fund, road and bridge fund, the health department fund, the employee benefit fund, economic development, council on aging, juvenile detention, solid waste, and the technology funds for the clerk, register of deeds and treasurer, special alcohol, special parks, 911 taxes, the 20-year sales tax, and I believe I've hit them all. So the 2006 10-year sales tax obviously rolled off in 16, but in the previous years we've had some expenditures that were still carried over. We have now expended all those funds this year. So that's what's on for today. Next week you'll be approving the local service road and the sewer districts. As presented, if you take out the sales tax expenditures, because those are obviously directly related to certain projects, the budget has an overall increase among all funds of $717,000, which reflects about a 1.65% increase over last year's if you do an equal comparison, where it's just budget to budget without those special projects. I think that's very reasonable. It's definitely within the CPI index. We're actually lower than what the state allows. So, and that's again reflective of the $0.25 reduction. So those are the things that I would like to point out, and I would answer any questions that I can prior to approval.
I think we've all been over this pretty thoroughly, but if anyone has any questions.
I don't really have a question, but I just would like to express my appreciation to Mr. Loughrry and Janet and all the people.
All the
that helped.
staff that worked on the budget and getting.
Right. Considering the COVID-19, everything that's been going on, to come up with a budget like this with a slight reduction in the mill levy, I think it was hard work, and we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. I did want to clarify. I know there's been a lot of conversation, but did anybody look to see, or I guess it maybe wouldn't be published until all budgets are out and official, but there's always questions around, the mill levy relative to adjacent counties and across Kansas, and we've always fallen in that lowest possible tier, bottom 5, bottom 10 out of 105, and just curious where that ranking will ultimately come out for 2021. So I guess we wouldn't have that for however many more weeks or months, but it's likely we're improving even further as far as where we're at relative to our peers with the steps we've taken. So.
We just got to get some businesses in here to help broaden the tax base.
And I was trying to remember from our work session last week, but I think we walked away with establishing a few numbers relative to just how underfunded we are relative to what it takes to maintain our 700 plus miles of roadway. And I think the estimates were it would take almost $10 million to get us to a status quo with an additional $2 million per year above and beyond what we're currently spending to maintain said status quo. So that's how far behind we've gotten over time. So everybody keeping that in mind when they're thinking about their roadways, I think is important. So
Yes. And we will have that on a future work session, so we can get those numbers
Finalized.
But yeah, well, and obviously that will be a bit of a moving target depending on the year, especially with roads, the rock roads. Bad winters, good winters. But we're trying to establish what an average would look like on what we should be budgeting if we were going to maintain the roads at like new standards, basically, or past standards.
It goes back to that broken formula we have where we don't have the assessed taxes, and maybe bring that up with Mr. Moran when he's here tomorrow about the payment in lieu of because of the billions of dollars of unassessed tax valuation that could definitely fix that problem.
That's exactly what makes this job so difficult is we're a community that's 35% tax exempt, and we're operating a budget on 65% of the funds that we should have. So this $250,000 decrease is reflective of all the little things that we've done over this last year, cutting waste, changing regulations to be more development friendly for residential subdivisions and small business. That's all we can do since we're 35% tax exempt to try and decrease that mill levy.
Okay. Anything else before we approve this or vote on this budget?
Well, just one other comment is, and this is for folks that are listening, is you're not going to get an overall reduction in your property taxes unless you talk to your school boards, your local, all the other local entities of government. This is only a small piece of it.
That's a very small piece of what we determine.
Right.
But
we get the blame or
we get the blame for
perception.
100%. I wish we could write two separate checks, one to the county, one to the school districts. But
and it's a very difficult year to do budgets.
it was extremely difficult. But anyways, any other questions or comments on the budget? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2021 Leavenworth County budget.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second on the budget. Is there any other discussion? Voting.
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other business for the board at this time? Then we'll move on to the public comment on a non-agenda item.
Morning, Nancy.
Morning, Nancy. Hey, before you start, Nancy, I got your email last week. I just want to express you are always welcome here, and you are always welcome to give your comments.
Thank you. So, good morning. I'm Nancy Carpenter, 14681 Kreider Road in Bonner Springs. As you all know, on July 15th, this board approved Resolution 2020-23, granting an SUP to Kaw Valley's Lenape Sand Quarry. Citizens were opposed to this project from the beginning and presented an abundance of evidence that this board could have drawn from to deny the SUP. But instead, with one notable exception, you voted to approve the SUP. At some point in this process, citizens asked the county who foots the bill when the county is sued. We were told that the burden ultimately falls on the shoulders of the taxpayers. Resolution 2020-23 was shared with the public on August 6th, and on August 11th, Kaw Valley filed a lawsuit in the district court to appeal a condition of that resolution. I obtained a copy of the filing from the court and have shared it with other citizens. You can only imagine the citizens' reactions. They ranged from, "We told them this would happen," to, "Expletive deleted, you mean we have to pay to defend the county on a matter we never wanted in the first place?" Anger, disappointment, disgust, dismay, but not resignation. Instead, we went back through the documents associated with this SUP and found relief. Since Kaw Valley does not own the land that they plan to dredge, the landowner had to sign an authorization to allow Kaw Valley to apply for an SUP. The landowner signed that authorization on January 16, 2019, on behalf of their trust. Becky graciously forwarded a copy of that notarized document to you on my behalf. If this material has already been successfully addressed, I thank you. As the public is not privy to discussions of this lawsuit behind closed doors, I felt it important to bring this matter into the light. I'd like to read item number 3 for the record. In it, the landowner agrees to shoulder the costs of any actions against the county in regards to this SUP. In my reading, I will correct the typo found in the 7th line saying out instead of our. We, the undersigned, hereby agree to protect, defend, indemnify, and hold the Board of County Commissioners of Leavenworth County, Kansas, its officers, employees, and agents, hereinafter collectively referred to as the county, free and harmless from and against any and all claims, losses, penalties, damages, settlements, costs, charges, professional fees, or other expenses or liabilities, whether false, fraudulent, meritless, or meritorious, of every kind and character, arising out of or relating to any and all claims, liens, demands, obligations, actions, proceedings, or cause of action of every kind and character, hereinafter claims, in connection with, relating to, or arising directly or indirectly out of this authorization and the actions taken by the applicant and the county in reliance thereof. I, the undersigned, hereby further agree to investigate, handle, respond to, provide defense for, and defend any such claims at my sole expense, and agree to hear all other costs, and agree to bear all other costs at my sole expense, and agree to bear all other costs and expenses related thereto, even if such claims are groundless, false, or fraudulent. We have consulted 3 independent lawyers as to the meaning of this section, and all agree that the landowner is responsible for the costs the county incurs in defending itself and any settlement costs agreed upon or awarded. I trust that the county will take appropriate action to see that the landowner lives up to their obligation so that the taxpayers do not bear this burden. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay. That was the only public comment, so I'll entertain a motion.
Doug, I have just one question. That's on a separate issue.
Okay.
Can you clarify what the nepotism policy is for the county and how that's enforced, or if it's enforceable on elected?
The county does have a nepotism policy. It talks about employing someone who would be either directly or indirectly supervised by a family member. However, the state of Kansas has ruled that nepotism policies do not apply to elected department heads. They have the right to hire, fire, promote, and demote solely at their discretion. No county policy can override that.
So basically it's by discretion of the elected officials.
The discretion of the elected officials, that policy does apply to all non-elected department heads and department employees.
So that'd be anything like if you go to Washington, their health care or their benefits, or meaning a whole other set of rules provided if you're elected.
Yes.
Then what everybody else must live by.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense. I get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before we go to our executive session? And how many minutes do you think we'll need?
1 hour, Commissioner.
1 hour. Okay. That'll work.
Give me a spare, Jeff. I think you usually read these. Let me take this one.
Okay.
I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of a subject involving legal interests of the counties as justified by KSA 4319B2 for consultation with legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume open meeting at 10:25 a.m. in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioners CULBERTSON, KAAZ, SCHIMKE, Smith, and STIEBEN, Senior County Counselor David Van Paris, and County Administrator Mark LOUGHRY.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the executive session? Voting.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Todd votes aye.
Let the record show that we have returned from executive session into regular session. No decisions were made. Topic was pending legal matters and legal counsel.
Ready for motion?
I am.
All right. I move that the board recess for a closed executive meeting for the discussion of a subject involving legal interest of the county as justified by KSA 775-4319B2 for consultation with legal counsel on the board, which would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship, and the board resume open meeting at 11 o'clock. We'll do 10:55 a.m. in the meeting room of the board. Present in the executive meeting will be Commissioners CULBERTSON, KAAZ, SCHIMKE, Smith, STIEBEN, Senior County Counselor David Van Paris, and County Administrator Mark LOUGHRY.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the executive session? Having none, voting.
Aye.
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 Let the record show we returned to regular session from executive session. Discussion was limited to attorney-client privilege. No decisions were made. Okay, do we have any other business before the board? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, go to our work session.
So moved.
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
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 Aye.